Hello and welcome to the Leading with Lean podcast. My name's Philip Holt, author of Leading with Lean, The Simplicity of Lean, and Leading Lean by Living Lean. And in this podcast, I narrate all three of my books, chapter by chapter, in which I share with you my over 30 years of experience as a lean leader across many companies globally. The Simplicity of Lean, Chapter 6, Workplace Organisation, 5S. What is WPO? Workplace Organisation, WPO, is an approach to ensuring that the workplace has everything that is required to get the job done effectively, organised to maximise efficiency, and with no redundant or unnecessary elements. The lean term most commonly used for this is 5S, which comes from the first letters of 5 Japanese words that have been roughly translated into 5 English words. S1, sort, S2, straighten, S3, sweep, S4, standardise, and S5, sustain. And in the book, you'll see a picture of the 5 S's going round in a circular manner with safety in the middle, which is an unmentioned S but is central to 5S and workplace organisation. The purpose of 5S is to reduce the waste that is created through disorganisation, which can be huge. In Chapter 10, I'll cover the 8 wastes that we identify for removal in lean thinking, and 5S is the starting point for their eradication. It is interesting that even in the physical world of manufacturing, where the need is most obvious, it's still difficult to get people fully engaged. So it's even more challenging in the office environment, where the need is normally nowhere near as obvious. When I was first introduced to lean thinking, a Japanese guru told the group I was with, if you can't do 5S, you can't do lean. I think a lot of the group listened politely, myself included, but didn't really believe him. Surely Kanban, cellular manufacture and the other heavy-hitting lean tools were much more impactful and exciting than 5S. However, as the group began to form into the team that would deploy lean across Philips and started to interact with the factories, it soon became clear that he was right. Wherever we tried to implement the more sophisticated lean tools without properly embedding 5S, they began to fail, and where we got 5S right, we would succeed. This became a theme, but what also became common was the resistance that we would encounter to 5S, as it would appear to be overzealous or petty to many, especially at the more senior levels in the organisation. It soon became clear that it was the most important area to succeed in if we were to flourish in our overall lean deployment, and the only way that we were going to prove its worth was to stop approaching the problem as 5S missionaries, and instead figure out what problems it could solve for our colleague customers. How do you solve a problem like 5S? To solve the problem of 5S, we started to look at the problems with which our colleagues were dealing. We soon discovered that there were numerous oil leaks on the floor, trip hazards, parts in the wrong place, information incorrect or the wrong version, tools not available when needed. Wherever we looked, there were issues that we accepted as the norm but solvable through good 5S. We started to tackle these using 5S, and guess what? People liked it. Instead of going to the people with a tool to make them implement, we went to them and asked if they needed help in solving some of their problems. They did, and we helped them to do so. This is subtle, but it is a key element of change management. Don't try to change people, help them to change themselves. 5S has many benefits, but at the core it is low cost, high impact, gets everyone involved, makes the 8 wastes visible. 5S is critical to the simplicity of lean, and it's therefore imperative that you implement 5S successfully by helping your colleagues use 5S to solve their problems. The 5 S's. Pre-S, safety. Despite commonly being referred to the 5 S's, there is another S, safety. As discussed in Chapter 2, safety is imperative as the precursor to a productive and effective environment, and this is the case regardless of a manufacturing or office environment. An environment where people are in physical danger or at risk of overload or burnout is not one that will facilitate good workplace organisation. The safety and security of our people is non-negotiable for the lean leader and will not be a compromise or a do-later activity. S1, sort. Once safety has been secured, the next element is sort, which requires that we evaluate what in the workplace we need to get the job done and what is surplus to requirements. It is human nature to hoard, and therefore most workplaces not operating under the rigour of 5S will have a lot of excess materials, data, or general items. It's therefore important that the team takes a critical eye to the workplace and decides whether they need the item or information right now, and if not, red tag it. Red tagging is a process by which, for physical items, a red tag label is attached to anything that is not currently in use or is doubtful, and records where it was located, when it was removed, and who removed it. It is then placed in a dedicated area, the red tag zone, and held for a period, normally a week or two, whilst the final disposition decision is made. The disposition decisions can be required, return to area, required infrequently, store for occasional use, repurpose to another area, sell, recycle, or scrap. For smaller physical items, say in an office, red tags may not be used, but instead an area set aside and a logbook used to record the items. For virtual items, that is information, data, electronic files, a red tag folder can be created for storing items not currently in use for evaluation. S2. Straighten. Once it has been determined that the right things are in place to do the job, it is important to think about where they ought to be kept, facilitating maximum efficiency. It's amazing how much of a difference in the overall effectiveness the position of items can make, and much consideration should be given to this part. A particularly overlooked element of 5S are the 3 Fs. Fixed quantity, how many should there be? Fixed location, where should they be kept? Fixed sequence, in which order should they be taken? By putting this in place, you begin to provide the team members with a visual way of controlling the flow of the value stream and create the precondition for continuous flow. When determining the 3 Fs, we ought to consider point of use, POU, and retrieval time, which allows us to lay out the workplace as logically as possible. So we'll give a score, and in the book you've got a chart here that demonstrates the score, the time to retrieve, and the comment. So basically a score of 1 is if it takes longer than 3 minutes to retrieve, and the comment is that you must leave the work area normally to do so. A score of 2 is less than 180 seconds, normally it's within the work area. A score of 3 is less than 30 seconds, where it's within the immediate area. A score of 4 is less than 10 seconds, within the workstation, and a score of 5 is less than 3 seconds, within natural movement. Those items that are used most frequently every cycle ought to score 5, whilst those items that are used infrequently, for example once per week, could score 1. As the frequency reduces, a lower score is more acceptable, although space permitting, it's ideal to have everything in the 4 or 5 range. S3. Sweep. Sweep is all about ensuring that we have a clean and tidy environment, and that, where we have recurring dirtiness or fouling, we get to the root cause of it. This is again a great example of 5S as the foundation of lean thinking, as it promotes root cause problem solving, not simply cleaning up the mess, but preventing its recurrence. It also supports the idea of teamwork, as cleaning up is not someone else's job, but is the responsibility of everyone. Sweep is not a one-time effort. In fact, after the first large effort to reach a high standard, the idea is that it's utilised on every shift or day activity, ensuring that it is little and often maintaining the standard on an ongoing basis. It also constitutes a key starting point of autonomous maintenance, providing the team with a way to perform easy-to-do maintenance tasks. S4. Standardise. As you may have expected, a key part of 5S is to standardise the work that has been done to achieve the state that the first 3 S's have delivered. Most people are familiar with the coloured markings found in factories, and these play a key part in that kind of environment. However, they should only be used where it makes sense, and putting coloured tape down does not constitute 5S. The whole point is that we make it clear when there is a change from standard procedure, so on a factory shop floor, it will make sense to mark it out where pallets and other materials should be. However, in an office location, it's probably overkill and might even alienate people. Be aware of what engages people and what annoys them. The sort, straighten and sweep elements should be standardised and allocated to the team members, providing teams and individuals with zones that they are responsible for. They will then be held accountable for the execution of the standard work of that zone. S5. Sustain. Earlier in the book I covered Kamishibai, and 5S is a prime candidate for this, as it's difficult to maintain and therefore needs the rigour of regular checks to keep everyone on board. In fact, it's unlikely that you will sustain 5S in your organisation without an audit board of some form, with the typical approach being as follows. Firstly, each zone is audited daily by the team leaders, the TLs. Weekly, the group leader, GLs, will perform checks across the zones, and then monthly, the area managers and management team will perform checks across the zones. Essentially, the TL checks are daily across the zone, and where there is a shift system in place, it would probably rotate across the TLs on a weekly basis. The GL checks will be based upon the commission by checks and normally randomised so that not all areas get checked each week, thus avoiding teams readying themselves for planned checks. A similar approach would normally be taken for the area managers and management team checks. And what you'll see in the book is a typical 5S schedule where it shows the owner from TL to GL to area manager to management team member. And again, these terminology can be different depending upon your organisation and where we are in the business, but essentially it's first level of leadership or supervision, second level, third level, and leadership team. And it shows the location at which we might have the schedule. So for the team leader in their own zone, for the group leader, they'd do it in the TL zones. The area managers would do it in the group leader zones, and the management team would do it in the area manager zone. So you can see that there's a tiering system here. And the regularity becomes less frequent as you move up the chain, but only because the higher up levels, such as the management team, are covering the whole of the location. Therefore, they're actually doing some probably every week. It's just that it will be every month for a particular area or zone. 5S in the office. It is often thought that 5S in the office isn't relevant, as offices are not considered places that require real organisation in the way that factory floors do. However, I firmly believe that that is at least as important that office environments apply 5S, as it promotes the mindset of process thinking, something that is duly lacking in most offices. Nevertheless, I am conscious of the damage that can be done when 5S is implemented in the office in the same way that it might be in a factory. Clumsily putting in place physical markers and safety crosses that seem ridiculous to the team members. It's therefore very important that the principles of 5S are applied rather than a generic approach, hence being with safety as the starting point, but understanding the difference in safety issues between a factory and an office environment. I discussed this in more detail in Chapter 2, where I gave examples of the considerations regarding the office environment. The office environment is one which has a big impact on the productivity of an organisation, as it affects the way that our people feel about the company, their motivation, the efficiency of doing their jobs, and the signals that it sends to all stakeholders about the organisation. Thinking about safety and the 5S's, the summarised approach for the office is as follows. Number 1, safety. Avoid accidents, ensure that the ergonomics are right, create an inspiring environment. S1, sort. Remove both physical and virtual waste, ensuring that we only have what we need to get the job done. S2, straighten. Put the remaining physical and virtual estate in the best order to access when required. S3, sweep. Ensure that there is regular clean of both the physical and virtual space. S4, standardise. Put in place standards for both the physical and virtual elements. Use the opportunity to create flow of information throughout the office, using visual management to create clear markers for all team members. Ensure that the approach to managing the processes is common for all team members. S5, sustain. Put in place zoning both physically and virtually and ensure clear ownership. Despite the wide availability of shared drives, SharePoints, team rooms, etc., it never fails to astonish me how many people still maintain their own copies of files and other information. It's essential to the functioning of an effective organisation that the team members agree to utilise shared documents, creating a single source of truth, rather than embark upon own best set of the data. An agreement on the taxonomy and revision control of documents is critical, as is determining how you will store the information. For example, structured, defined folders and subfolders, or search using metadata and tags combined with desktop search features, or a combination of the two. What is most important is that the rigour and discipline that would be applied in the manufacturing environment is applied to the office. It's too easy to allow entropy to set in for the office or for ownership to lapse, as it can feel like it isn't that important. This is where true leadership is important, role modelling the importance of 5S in the office and ensuring that all team members are committed to the programme. That ends this chapter with the final word going to John Cotter. Culture changes only after you have successfully altered people's actions, after the new behaviour produces some clear benefits for a period of time.